following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Brian Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then of course the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Project Entertainment Network presents My Favorite Story, an anthology featuring short fiction written by the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network podcasts, with
Mary Sangiovanni and Brian Keene from The Horror Show,
Chuck Border, Aaron Sweet, El Mahore, and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method,
Jamie Engel of Origins,
Bizung's Mr. Frank,
Tom Clark from Necrocast, It On,
It Cooks, Amber Fallon,
Three Guys with Beards, Christopher Golden, Jim Moore and Jonathan Mabry,
The Buttercup of Doom, Kelly Owen,
Matters of Faith's Jay Wilburn,
John Urbansic of Eight Stains.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology from Project Entertainment Network, available on Kindle, Nook, and soon in paperback from the Project Entertainment Network store.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And Excelsior, true believers. Welcome back once again to Defenders Dialogue. I am your host, Brian Keene, flying solo this week. My co-host, Christopher Golden, is still gallivanting around the world, and I am here in studio by myself. If the show sounds different this week, that's because I'm actually recording it in my home studio, which is where we record the Horror Show with Brian Keene and Mary Sangiovanni's Cosmic Shenanigans. So it'll just be me and engineer Tommy Clark. We won't be doing this through YouTube, so the sound might be a little different. First of all, I want to apologize to you listeners. It's been about a month since you've had a new episode of Defenders Dialogue. Originally, our plan was, while Chris was in Romania and elsewhere, I would record some solo episodes, and you would have those to hold you over. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. In case you're someone who does not frequent the internet or social media and you haven't heard, about 3 weeks ago, I had a horrible, horrible accident. Received burns on my left arm from just above my elbow all the way down to my fingertips. Burned so bad that my elbow was a crater, and as my girlfriend and author Mary Sangiovanni said, my wrist looked like a chicken wing that had been left on the grill too long. It was just blackened. I also received some flash burns to my scalp and my forehead and my left ear. I am recuperating, but it was a very long process and a very expensive process. Like many freelance writers, I do not have health insurance, so I'm paying cash for this procedure. We still, 3 weeks later, don't know what the final tally is going to be. There were 2 separate hospitals, including a state-of-the-art burn ward, one of the best burn surgeons on the East Coast. All kinds of expenses. I've been told by medical professionals that when all is said and done, we're probably looking at around $250,000, possibly close to $300,000. However, the hospitals, particularly the burn ward, have been very, very good about discounting things for us and working with us. There was a GoFundMe started by author Stephen Kosnewski, which has raised, I believe, $60,000 for Mary and myself. There are several charitable organizations who have stepped in to help out, and we'll get it paid. I'm confident that we'll get it paid. But yeah, that's why you didn't get a new show for several weeks now. And as I said, I am slowly recovering, slowly getting back to work. I don't have full use of my left arm yet, but I can use it. I use it to type. The problem is I don't have any sensation in my fingertips, so I can't really feel the keyboard beneath my fingertips. So what I do is a combination of typing, and then when that just gets to be too much, I switch over to Dragon dictation software. But anyway, thanks to all of you for your well wishes and your prayers and your spells and just the good vibes you have sent our way during this ordeal. But hey, let's get to something fun. Let's talk about the Defenders. Let's talk about Marvel Comics, because that's why you listen to this show. While I was recovering, a very dear friend of mine sent me just a stack of Bronze Age Marvel, DC, and Charlton Comics and Atlas Comics back issues, including Atlas Comics Demon Hunter #1, which we had talked about on this show briefly. Demon Hunter was actually the genesis of Devil Slayer, the Defenders character Devil Slayer. He actually got his start in another company's comic book, so it was very cool to have that. Also included was Marvel Team Up issue number 33, which features Spider-Man and Defender Nighthawk. And I could have swore Chris and I covered this on the show, but it turns out we did not. So we apologize for that, and we're going to get to it this week. That's what we're going to do right now. So if you're reading along at home, you want Marvel Team Up, issue 33, Spider-Man and Nighthawk. This was published in 1975. It's written by Defenders scribe Jerry Conway. Longtime Defenders artist Sal Buscema does the layouts. Vince Colletta does the finished art. It is edited by Len Wein. Now, in terms of continuity, where does this story fit in? Well, it takes place just a few hours after Giant Size Defenders #4. So if you want to refresh yourself on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you listen to Defenders Dialogue, you would want to go back to episode 6, where Chris and I talked about Giant Size Defenders #4. In that issue, you'll remember that the villain Egghead set off a bomb to try to kill his niece, Trish Starr, who is, at that time, the girlfriend of Kyle Richmond, a.k.a. Nighthawk. Nighthawk is injured in the blast, which, and Trish herself loses an arm. Now, what's funny about this, as we know, in that storyline, the blast is what leads into the Headman Nebulon Elf with a Gun saga. And you'll remember in that, Nighthawk's brain is actually taken out of his body. Chandu, his consciousness is taken. I can't even remember. Yeah, his Chandu the Mystic's consciousness is transferred into Nighthawk's body. His brain is transferred into Nighthawk's body. Nighthawk's brain is put in a bowl. And then later, Jack Norris becomes Nighthawk for a little while, and Chandu's consciousness gets transferred into Hulk's pet deer, Bambi. Anyway, you remember all that nonsense, okay? The reason I bring it up is because Marvel Team Up issue 33 doesn't address any of this. It takes place a few hours after that explosion, and rather than being in the hospital, what we see is Kyle Richmond arriving at his Manhattan penthouse. And he's thinking about the accident. Page 2, he says, well, at least my body still works properly. I suppose I've got a lot to be thankful for, considering how I came out of that bomb blast in one piece. And he goes on to talk about Trish losing her arm, etc. But there's no mention of, the Headman Nebulon saga. So This is clearly a case of 1970s one editor not knowing what was going on in a book versus another editor knowing what's going on in a book. This would have qualified for a no prize back in the day. Anyway, Cal arrives at his penthouse, and lo and behold, there's a mysterious figure in his study. Average superhero fight takes place. This costumed figure defeats Kyle. Kyle thinks to himself that it's because he's weakened and maybe he shouldn't have checked himself out of the hospital. And the costume figure takes off. Now, two things happen then as Kyle is recovering. Number one, he thinks he recognizes this costume figure that was robbing his penthouse. He goes to his computer, because remember, Nighthawk is Marvel's version of Batman, so of course he has a crime computer in 1975 as well. And yes, sure enough, this costume figure is the Spider-Man villain known as the Looter, who first appeared in Spider-Man issue 36. The other thing Kyle figures out is that he had a meteor in his study, because remember, Kyle is a wealthy playboy. He can afford to buy things like meteors. He had a meteor in his study, and the Looter has stolen that meteor. So Nighthawk thinks, okay, I need to ask Spider-Man about the Looter and find out what's going on. We then transition to our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Now, I should mention, this issue of Marvel Team Up takes place during the events of Spider-Man 145, issue 145. Now, what was going on in Spider-Man 145? It's actually one of the key storylines in the history of Spider-Man. Gwen Stacy, his first love, has apparently come back from the dead. Now, we will come to find out later that it's not really Gwen, it's her clone. And this will lead into the 1990s Clone Saga, the much maligned, and rightfully maligned, in my opinion, Clone Saga. But basically what you need to know as far as the Defenders go is Spider-Man is pretty fucked up right now. He's not cracking jokes. He's not tossing off one-liners. He is in a bad mood. And he's lamenting to himself how cruel it is that someone would impersonate his dead love, Gwen Stacy. Also, his Aunt May is in the hospital after having a heart attack. He's swinging around the city looking for the Scorpion because, again, this issue takes place during the events of Spider-Man 145, in which he's fighting the Scorpion. So anyway, he's swinging around, he's all lost in thoughts, and then his spidey sense starts tingling, and Nighthawk approaches him in midair. And, of course, we get that classic 1970s Marvel plot machination, which is, two heroes who have never met before have to fight it out. So they do. They fight it out for a few panels. And then, they start to talk. And Spidey thinks to himself, oh, well, Daredevil mentioned to me once he's a guy named Nighthawk. And Nighthawk introduces himself as such. And they get to talking. And it's worth pointing out, Spider-Man is a dick here. Now, again, you got to think about everything that's going on in his life, but he's as big of a dick here as Doctor Strange is in those early issues of the Defenders, which we've talked about at length if you go back and listen. Anyway, they talk, and, Spider-Man tells him what he knows about the Looter, etc. And then they both go on their happy ways. Spidey points out that... Well, here, actually, you know what I'm going to do? Normally Chris would be here, but I'm just going to read it to you. Spidey tells Nighthawk, the Looter was one of the more powerful villains I ever fought, and as far as I know, he never lost that power. The last time we battled, I beat him by sheer willpower, but that was years ago. He might have grown stronger since then, perhaps even craftier. I can't let you go after him alone, Nighthawk. The Scorpion will have to wait. And Kyle says, that's fine with me, Webhead. I'm kind of fond of working in a team anyway. What say I check the state prison to find out how the Looter escaped, while Spider-Man looks over the Looter's old headquarters, his old laboratory. And they plan on meeting up again in 2 hours to compare notes. So, Nighthawk arrives at the state penitentiary in New York. He lands. He finds the warden waiting for him. He tells the warden that he's there to check on a man named Norton G. Fester, a.k.a. the Looter. They say they assigned him to a cell with a cellmate named Bill Gordon, which turned out to be a mistake. The warden tells him, perhaps I should... Fester had been an absolutely model prisoner. He obeyed all the regulations, bothered no one, and behaved himself admirably. We thought he'd be a good influence on Mr. Gordon, but as it turned out, what occurred was quite the reverse. Oh my, yes. So what we find out is that this other cellmate was the Meteor Man, okay? And he ends up pissing off the Looter to the point where he breaks free. There's a subplot here with this cult that we're not going to get into because it doesn't impact the Defenders. It's something that impacts future issues of Marvel Team Up. So I'm not going to get into that. I will say as a quick aside, though, Chris and I have been talking about what we're going to do with this podcast after we finish the run of Defenders. And we don't know yet. We've talked about, should we do another member of the Defenders solo book like Submariner or Doctor Strange or the Hulk? Should we do the Champions? Should we do Son of Satan, Ghost Rider? I got to tell you, I think Marvel Team Up or Marvel 2-in-1 would be good ones to do because you get a good glimpse of the entire Marvel universe. I also have to tell you, it's a treat to do this show reading the actual original comic book rather than the collected editions that I usually use. So anyway, we then transition to Spider-Man, and the Looter drops out of the sky on him. Apparently his spidey sense isn't working for that page. And the Looter tells him, "Imbecile, I'm the Looter no longer. In honor of my newfound freedom, I've rechristened myself the Meteor Man." And it turns out that's why he stole the meteor from Kyle Richmond's study. Spidey is falling out of the sky. He saves himself by shooting out some strands of webbing. Then he goes after the Looter. They're fighting in midair. They're soaring high over Manhattan. Spidey falls again. This time there's nothing for him to web. Nighthawk shows up at the last minute and catches him and saves him. So they land on a rooftop. And they get in an argument. Spidey says, "What do you mean you don't think this is important enough to keep working on? He stole your property, didn't he? He's a menace, isn't he?" And Nighthawk says, "It's true he took away my meteor, Spider-Man, but I'm not so sure about his being a menace. He's a sick man. He needs help, and I'm not sure that sending him back to prison is the sort of help he needs." And Spidey says, "What should we do with him? Give him some roses and send him on his way? That man is dangerous. We got to stop him now. But maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe you're just afraid. Is that it, Nighthawk?" And he calls Nighthawk a costume coward, and Nighthawk lays Spider-Man out with one punch. The sound effect caption is whammo, and we see Spider-Man go flying across the rooftop, and Nighthawk looms over him, fist clenched, and he says, "That's it for you, wall crawler. Whatever is eating you has made you a little bloodthirsty. It's also made you a little stupid." And Nighthawk leaves. He goes home, and, Spider-Man bemoans that he is turning into quite a jerk. And that's the end of the issue. There's no real resolution. Meteor Man isn't caught. He isn't sent to a hospital to get help. He isn't sent back to prison. Nighthawk goes home, and that would lead into the Sons of the Serpent saga. Well, actually, no. I guess it still leads into the Headman saga in Defenders. So, as I said, it doesn't really match up in continuity. It's not a real satisfying story, but it is part of the Defenders saga, a part that Chris and I accidentally skipped over, and now in this special episode, we have included it for you. Before I go here, I do want to remind folks, this episode of Defenders Dialogue is brought to you by Cereal Box, the HBO for readers. what you can do, they have all kinds of serials, all kinds of different genres: romance, western, adventure, mystery. They have a horror serial coming up this October called Silverwood. I'm the showrunner for it. The writers are Richard Chismar, the Sisters of Slaughter, Stephen Kosnewski, and myself. What you can do, you can read the prose serial, or if you prefer audiobooks, you can listen to the prose serial. And you can switch back and forth. Like, let's say you want to read at home, but then you got to go to work. You read it on your iPad, and then you get in the car, and bam, it remembers right where you left off, picks up, you listen to it on your way to work. You can find out more at serialbox.com. That's SERIAL box.com. If you enjoy this show, you might also enjoy our sister shows. Chris has one every week that he hosts with Jim Moore and Jonathan Mayberry. That's called Three Guys with Beards. I have one that I host every week called The Horror Show with Brian Keene. Both of those are available via the Project Entertainment Network. You might also enjoy Tom Clark's podcast, The Necrocasticon. That's also available via the Project Entertainment Network. You can listen to them for free on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, all other platforms. Do us a favor. If you do listen to us on iTunes, please consider leaving us a review. I'm not going to tell you to leave 5 stars, but if you think we warrant 5 stars, I'm not going to argue with that either. But yeah, any review you leave helps us, with advertising and things of that nature, marketing, etc. So help us out, do that. Next week, Chris will be back, and we begin the greatest era in Defenders history, and that is the arrival of writer J.M. DeMatteis. So we'll see you then. Until next time, Excelsior.
Do you love comic books and consider yourself a die-hard fan? Then you need to listen to Parlapod. We have news, reviews, and interviews with your favorite pros, all while bringing some serious laughs. New episodes drop every Wednesday in time for New Comic Book Day. Parlapod is available on the Project Entertainment Network, all major podcast outlets, and parlapod.com. Tune in and fuel your fandom with Parlapod.
Three Guys with Beards.
The Project Entertainment Network store, featuring t-shirts, mugs, stickers, hoodies and more from your favorite Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Ink Stain Scribbler's Rest.
The Horror Show with Brian Keene.
Why not show your loyalty by wearing a cool product from the podcast group and show off to your friends?
It Cooks.
Armcast.
The Mondo Method Monster Attack.
Necrocastical.
Go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com and click on the store tab for more details.
The Liars Club podcast.
Pizza.
The Lunch Ladies Book Club.
Matters of Faith.
The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with stuff from the best podcasts on the internet.
The Curtain Jerkers.
Buttercup of Doom.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.